Terry Quinn Gray, and along with Judd Wagner, I am co-chair of the Delaware STEM Council. We would like to thank you for coming out at the end of your long and rainy work day to help us recognize the truly important and innovative work our teachers are doing in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. As many of you know, the Delaware STEM Council was the brainchild of Governor Jack Markell, a man I consider to be a visionary and a trailblazer in education and a true champion for our kids. Governor Markell recognizes that if we're going to have a thriving and prosperous state, we need to make sure our students have access to the very best education, and then the very best education, and especially when it comes to STEM, an area that offers rich and diverse career paths and great economic potential and promise. When we began, the STEM Council knew we had some work to do, but we also knew that there were teachers right now in our schools day in and day out doing some incredibly innovative work. And tonight is all about recognizing those teachers, their administrators, their families, their friends, and their students for the efforts they're doing to make STEM so great in this state. So before we get started, I want to give every educator in the room a round of applause. Before we go any further, I just wanted to once again acknowledge some very important people who made this inaugural effort really happen. We had 3 different efforts in the STEM Council, and we are in many ways a grassroots effort, eating a lot of grass before we kind of get the roots planted. And so what we started with was actually a team approach, really a project team approach, and we had 3 teams that pulled together this effort, I think since January to this point. And so we had a pretty aggressive timeline, 6 months, if you will, before we got to the application phase. And you heard Dr. Bunting and Dr. Vaston mention earlier a design team that actually put together the actual process and rubric. And I wanted to acknowledge Sharon Dinsler and April McCrae for being really the brainchild of that work. And if you're in the room and I can't see you, I know I saw April, not sure about Sharon, if you would please stand. The second major work stream, so once we had the rubric and the application process and we actually launched that, and the governor was personally there as well as with Ashland to help us launch the effort, we had a judging team, and that judging team was led by Dr. Susan Bunting and then Secretary Sills of Technology for the state. And that team included Terry Angeles, Dr. Eric Cheek, Mary Pinkston, Terry Hodges, Michael Kruger. If you're in the room, would you please stand? And then there was a handoff once again from that judging team, that judging selection team, to the Symposium Awards team. And that team was actually led by Dr. Rita Vasta and Dr. Randa Gushel, and included Dr. Ross Ombrecht, Terry Angeles, Phyllis Buchanan, Margaret Aiken, I think I heard Rebecca Williams, and then April shows up one more time. Stand up if you would. And so before we go on, if you had not heard, then Judd and I, they call us like herding cats, and did we hear Judd that we were big cats to herd? And so that leaves Daniel Sinhinsky, who's our program manager, to make all this happen. And where are you, Daniel? Thank you. Let's give him a hand. So how did this all get started? And so you have the actual energy and the foresight of the Ashland company who came forward and said, we want to actually do something to recognize educators in STEM in the state. And so it's really important and special when a company comes forward with that vision and social responsibility to who we are as educators, and particularly in the STEM space. And so I want to just thank Ashland for making the inaugural Delaware STEM Educator Awards possible by providing not only the cash awards that the 2 groups of teachers will receive tonight, but also really just planting the seed in us, and we hope that this will be a program that will go forward many years. Let's give a round of applause to Ashland. So with that, we'll go right on with the program, and I want to actually ask Mr. Luke Ryan, Director of CTE, that's Career and Technical Education and STEM at the Department of Education, to come forward.
So thank you, Terry. So just to kind of start, Terry and Judd asked that I outline the work that the department is engaged in around career and technical education and STEM programs. And ultimately that work can be summarized really in 3 buckets. First and foremost is building out career pathways that lead to college and career success for every child. And that includes expanding career and technical education to create career fields and career opportunities at the secondary and post-secondary level that really engage and excite every child about what that looks like and how they work or how they move into the world of work. So most of that actually begins really with engaging our representatives, and that includes business and industry, that includes institutions of higher education, and local school systems to really create scalable products that we can offer across the state of Delaware that lead to benchmark skills for students earning industry-recognized credentials, early college credit, so that they have multiple entry and exit points into their path forward, so that if a child wants to move into a career, they have the opportunity to do that with a value-added credential, with an accelerated path forward in their secondary program, or if they want to continue their education, they have advanced standing. We've created capacity to offer dual enrollment in a degree area so that they can pursue a 2-year, a 4-year, or a credential program seamlessly out of high school. The second area of work is really around creating shared accountability. And that's an infrastructure where we partner with like state agencies, the Department of Labor, the Department of Economic Development, the Governor's Office, to really create pathways for children and a model of accountability that promotes continuous program improvement. And that really is the state working in partnership with local education agencies to provide and create opportunities for every child and ensure that every teacher has the resources and the professional development opportunities to truly engage and accelerate student success. The last piece is really that professional learning, and that's creating opportunities to engage business and industry in meaningful ways at the secondary and post-secondary levels, so that we create pathways and build a professional capacity of all involved, so school principals, school administrators, teachers, as well as our community stakeholders, to really engage and deliver service to students. So if you see yourself kind of in that work, I would encourage you to kind of pull me aside as we have the opportunity to talk and engage further this evening, so that I can really talk to you and really kind of elaborate on the work that we intend to do, the work that we're engaged in, and how we're partnering with business and industry and local school systems to really accelerate career and technical education and STEM programs for students in the state. Thank you.
So the reason that we allowed and really appreciate Luke being here is that we just want to make sure the word is out that we're talking about STEM in many ways in the state, and when we talk about career and technical education, we're saying it's a different and innovative way not only to engage our students and communities and businesses, but also to actually break the traditional silos of STEM and add that STEM component to CTE. And really, there's been some exciting pathways that I know we'll see in the 2015-16 school year. So please follow up and keep watch. And the mantra for us in the STEM Council, Catalyze, Communicate, Connect, will be actually helping spread that word. So be on the lookout for that. Our next very special guest is Governor Jack Markell, and as I mentioned, he's the brainchild of not only the Delaware STEM Council, but has been really supportive of this work and this inaugural event. So he deserves a big introduction, but he doesn't need a big one. We all know him very well.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I want to thank Terry and Judd for their leadership of the STEM Council over the last few years. And I also want to thank Luke for the work of the department, and I'll be introducing Luis Fernandez in a few minutes from Ashland. And of course, we're very grateful to the men and women of Ashland for their support of this initiative. I also want to thank the members of the STEM Council, that's educators and folks from the business world alike, as well as the Business Network. To all of the educators who are here, obviously you are the ones, this is where the rubber meets the road, and we're incredibly grateful to you for the work that you do every day. And I see a couple of superintendents who are here as well. I've seen Susan Bunting from Indian River and Kevin Fitzgerald from Cesar Rodney. I'm told Matt Burrows was here. I didn't see Matt, but he may be here as well. I want to thank them. This is a very important initiative for the state of Delaware. I want to talk about that just a little bit. There's a really interesting book that came out about a year ago. It's called The Second Machine Age, and it was written by a couple of professors from MIT, and I would tell you the professors' names, but one of them is incredibly long and complicated, and I would never get it right. But they really talk about the implications for our world and for our young people by virtue of the fact that digital technologies are exploding, by the fact that every one of us now carries in our pocket and our smartphone more computing power than ever could have been imagined, a decade ago, let alone 20 or 30 years ago. And the way the world around us is changing. And more to the point, what I think is really relevant to why we are all here, the authors say that there's never been a better time to be an individual with the right skills. But they also say it's never really been a worse time to be somebody without the right skills, somebody who can compete and somebody who can engage with businesses all over the world, particularly around the STEM fields. And it was sobering to me when I learned recently that if you compare the kind of educational, what students in other countries are focused on versus what they're focusing on here. In India, as an example, of male college students in India, 65% are majoring in STEM subjects. In this country, 32% of male college students are majoring in STEM subjects. For women, college students in India, 60% are majoring in STEM subjects, and in the United States, 4% are majoring in STEM subjects. I mean, these are staggering figures, because we live in a world where businesses have more choices, employers have more choices than they have ever had before about where they're going to locate and expand and hire. And the reason for that is because they now have access to a great workforce in all kinds of countries around the world. And when I've had the opportunity in the last few years to travel to India and to China, Japan, Korea, Israel, and others, it is always remarkable how, when I'm driving down the road, how many multinational companies, names that all of us would recognize, have set up shop, research and development, or manufacturing plants that in all of these countries that 30 years ago by default would have gone to the United States or Western Europe or Canada or Australia. The fact is, businesses around the world have more choices than they have ever had before. And there are real implications for all of us. And those implications, of course, have to do with the work that all of you are doing in your classrooms. I was reminded of this just today. I was down in Sussex County all day in a couple of businesses that are actually located within the Susan Bunting's district, Indian River. I visited M&T Bank, which has a big, we know M&T up here in terms of the banking, but they have a big operation in Millsboro, Delaware, about 460 employees. And they also have there a very sophisticated data center. They spent $20 million to build that data center over the last couple of years. And it's really the data center, not just for the Millsboro, Delaware operation, but it's one of the two key data centers for their entire company throughout the country. And they were talking to me. They plan to hire a number of people right there in Millsboro, Delaware, who are expert in cybersecurity. And these are jobs that require a very high level of sophistication. And so when we think about the kind of work, the kind of excellent work that's going on in the Indian River School District, we are very hopeful that students who have already come out or who will come out in the future from those schools will have the opportunity to work at an employer like that. 5 minutes away from M&T's operation in Millsboro is another company. It's called Intervet. It's owned by Merck, the big pharmaceutical company. That Intervet's been in Millsboro for a couple of decades. Merck bought them a few years ago. Merck, of course, been one of the major pharmaceutical companies in the entire world. And Millsboro, right here in Delaware, they employ about 270 people who focus on poultry vaccine, animal health, and of course the poultry industry being very important to Sussex County and to the entire state of Delaware. They also, a significant research and development operation right there, as well as their manufacturing operation. Initiatives where Ashland came to us and said, we like being in Delaware, we are a science company, a technology company, and we want to do what we can to make sure that, for decades from now, Delaware continues to be a great place to welcome science and technology companies. And so we're so grateful for the partnership. With that, I would ask all of you to join me in welcoming Luis Fernandez.
Good evening. Thank you, Governor, for your very kind words. It's really my pleasure to be with you tonight for this inaugural event of the Delaware STEM Educator Awards. On behalf of Ashland, I want to thank you for your focus and commitment, as your words just expressed, to STEM education in the state of Delaware. It's just fantastic and something we really need, so thank you. Just like the Governor, I would also like to acknowledge Terry King-Ray, Judd Wagner, and Luke Ryan for their outstanding leadership and for championing this important cause, and all of the educators, of course, all of you that are here this evening. Thank you for being here. Ashland is very proud to partner with Delaware, the Delaware STEM Council, and the Delaware Department of Education to recognize some of the state's top educators who are committed to nurturing and inspiring tomorrow's leaders, individuals that will think critically. Oops, my page is stuck together. As Albert Einstein once said, we can solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And that's the critical thinking that our educators need to teach all of these students. We are a company based in science, a company fundamentally developing products that are used in many of the products that are used on a daily basis. And as such, it is very important for us to have the right talent with the right knowledge and understanding of science, technology, math, and engineering skills. For Ashland, for Delaware, and for business located in the United States, and for those that are operated globally, we need this talent. The Governor mentioned a little bit about Ashland. We are a chemical company. We have about 11,000 employees globally, and we have operations in about 100 countries. One of the key things is one of our innovation centers of excellence is here in Delaware, in that site that Hercules had for many years. And we develop many of the new products that are going to end up in the materials that you buy. For example, we help with your teeth so they get whiter or